Before the video starts, I quickly just want to mention one thing and we'll get right into the topic and the discussion of the main video. For those of you who are unaware, on my community page, I've been posting polls for my next solo run. If you would like to help in determining who I play next, I have a poll for the final 3 contestants. Those characters being Claude, Kilda, and Marianne. Once the poll is concluded, I'll be able to stream attempts on Twitch and discuss how I think the unit will perform going into the attempts. With that promotion out of the way, let's delve right into the video. With Chapter 4 now complete, it's our duty to press forward and take on the next obstacle, being Chapter 5. This chapter presents our first monster type enemy, for a long route map for the whole cast and solo runs. Without a tool to skip the chapter enemies, we are forced to take on the whole map and defeat each unit one by one. Early on during my investigation with solo runs, I had issues with reliability killing the monster. Its high damage output and immobility based attacks, it's easy to get trapped in its coil. Fortunately, with a little bit of experience, I've conducted a plan that will make defeating the monster trivial. I should mention, during the previous chapter, Ferdinand's growths have averaged out in most important areas, with minor issues in places that I personally find not to be that important. The charisma deficit notably can be an issue on dodge rates for gambit based attacks, but if I can avoid them as much as possible, their impact should be little. Going into the explore phase, it should be of note that we've unlocked the following features: blacksmith, sauna, and saint statues. In Fire Emblem 3 Houses, the blacksmith mechanic allows players to enhance weapons and equipment of their units, thereby improving their combat effectiveness. Here's how it works. Weapon forging. Players can forge weapons to increase their might, hit rate, and critical hit rate. Forging a weapon requires appropriate materials, which can be obtained through various means of exploration, battles, or purchasing from the marketplace. These weapons degrade over time with use, and the blacksmith allows players to repair them. Repairing a weapon restores its durability, allowing it to be used in battle without the risk of breaking. With rare materials usually dropped from monsters or purchased at the late game shop, players can forge entirely new weapons, them being things like killer and magic based weapons. All of your tools when it comes to the blacksmith are tied to your professor level. So the higher the level, the better stuff you can make. My go-to weapons I forge are stuff like plus type variants of weapons, as well as mentioned rare weapon types. Skill-based units like Ferdinand, you tend to make a great 2-range option and he's killing weapons. In this instance, focusing on lances and bows as the main weapons to improve and enhance. The sauna is a unique feature that allows players to improve the unit's motivation and bond with other characters. Successfully create a relaxing experience for your selected unit. They will gain bonuses to increase their class skills and tutoring, as well as improving motivation. You can also combo this with improving Byleth, but that isn't as important in this solo run. I tend not to use this option very much. I see it being very useful for characters that desire magic based tutoring. It's a way to get your tutoring done better. Saint statues are a mechanic that allows you to provide small benefits to your whole roster in exchange for renown points. Points are gained by completing quests. For example, if we look at each of the statues' enhancement trees, they provide benefits like the following bonuses to skill types, divine pulse count, experience bonus, and an increase to stat caps. Standouts are divine pulse bonuses, experience bonuses, and additional class experience point bonus. These tools are very effective in helping our solo unit reach god tier status. Class experience just makes grinding quicker for skill based abilities. Divine pulses helping us with reliability, plus with increased experience and getting stat increases quicker. This will aid in our endeavor. Be a note with the DLC, we are granted a base start to our renown amount, giving it a nice boost to get through the trees a little quicker. As the game progresses, I'll be adding more buffs as I go along. With the new features now discussed, let's delve into the pre-chapter preparations. The goal is to start finalizing class masteries before we hit level 20, and the best abilities from intermediate classes. To do this, I continue to patch areas like swords and flying being for advanced classes. However, not having Pegasus access sucks. The following classes this chapter I set into are Mercenary, Cavalier, and Thief. In line with the skill experience of Ferdinand, I've also been training his adjutant to get Armored Knight, to get a new adjutant type, Guard. Adjutant Guard is the most powerful of these 3 adjutant combat possibilities. It will always reduce the damage of the second attack if assigned when the unit gets doubled. Furthermore, the second attack of the double attack would kill the assigned unit. Adjutant Guard will make him survive on 1 HP. This works even if the unit only had 1 HP to start with. If the enemy is attacking with a brave weapon or gauntlets and has enough attack speed to quadruple hit, the Adjutant Guard effects will apply on the 3rd and the 4th hit instead. This will help in pinches where Ferdinand struggles to take doubling enemies. It's nice utility to have. During my exploring, I was able to get +1 strength stat booster. A bit less than normal, but I like to capitalize on auxiliary battles. The auxiliary battles, they were pretty easy. I chose the ones that had lower level enemies to help aid in class mastery shenanigans. I was able to master Brigand and Archer for their master abilities Hit plus 20 and Death Blow. Key abilities that will carry us through the early game. It should be noted that doing one of these Orcs Battles quests, I unlocked the General Shop for in the following chapter. I like to point out that in most cases, it's just best to crowd units around and void tiles, and have them grind on broken weapons to gain class and skill experience. I did this to secure an A in all weapon ranks where possible. During the class certs, I was able to show off the stat gains from Thief. Ferdinand gained +1 dex. In the last video, I discussed that mechanic but failed to discuss it at the correct time. Whoops. Anyway, with all that pre-chapter prep out of the way, let's discuss the chapter itself. Chapter 5 equips goes as follows. I grab Helm Splitter to help kill the Armored Knight mini-boss, as well as Miklan. The boss cheese coming up, I use Archer, mostly though for the great 3 to 4 range combat capabilities. Aligning abilities with like Bow Prowess level 5, Hit plus 20, Death Blow, Close Counter, and Speed plus 2. Ferdinand shouldn't have problems going into this main chapter mission. As discussed earlier, the plan of attack's pretty simple. Take on the units one by one until all are defeated. It's at this point that Ferdinand's speed, well attack speed, is much greater than the enemy, so most of these enemies are trivial. Pretty much getting one rounded in 2 attacks the first stage of combat. One could argue it's optimal to have Gilbert stay alive, but he isn't integral and I'd rather not use him since he is a green unit and not the focus of our solo run. So we just let him die and do the minimal amount of usage besides killing the enemies before they get to Gilbert. I know someone discussed on Reddit that they didn't like green units contributing in combat, but it's kind of inevitable. There's the previous chapter, this chapter, and I think chapter 8 that has some notable green unit uses before time skip, and there's a couple of uses of the green units that are kind of unavoidable with just one unit. Like in the previous chapter though, Ferdinand does tend to have some issues when it comes to mage-based units, though it seems that as long as they don't double him, he should be all good. The plan of attack most of the time being to focus on those mage type units. One could also argue that having Lorenz as an adjutant isn't as optimal as someone that has an A support due to the decreased hit rate and activation rate of guard adjutant abilities, but I'm mainly using the adjutant for the linked attack benefits of +2 might with his special bond. So his other benefits I'm not really accounting for besides linked attacks. It will help him in niche scenarios where he does need it. But it's like the scenario before, we had to use the Divine Pulse because it didn't activate. So I'm not going to rely on it too much. It's just kind of like an added bonus. Besides magic units, the Gambit units are also proving to be a bit annoying as well. But with careful positioning and planning, they too go down pretty easily. Before we move on to the mini boss that has the accuracy ring, we gotta worry about the reinforcement units that happen midpoint during the map. It should be a note that 2 waves of reinforcements come from the left side. If we wanted to block the units from spawning, we could have Ferdinand go back to where they spawn, specific tile that they spawn, and have them not appear. But we want the XP, so we're just going to let them attack Ferdinand and kill them one by one. Another thing that could be done if you wanted to optimally do this chapter by turn count, Archer has enough range that if you wanted to, you could use Curve Shot from a lower level and snipe Miklan from behind. However, this makes the map quite significantly harder, as once he converts into a monster, all the other units will start coming at you one by one, and that's quite tedious to manage. So we're just going to route the map, then kill Miklan, killing the mini boss with just a mace there, little Morning Star. Didn't really need the combat art for the mini boss, but we will use the combat art Helm Splitter for Miklan. Quite more bulky than the mini boss. Other than me getting a little greedy when it comes to attacking multiple enemies at once, going around the spiral seems pretty easy. Didn't encounter many issues other than me being greedy, so let's just move on to the boss himself, Miklan. How I approach Miklan is pretty simple. All I do is, at range, use the combat art Curve Shot to shoot at my maximum distance that I can to get a little pot shot off and force him to take an extra 10 points of damage after the round ends. Have him come up and try to hit us, forcing him off the heal tile, and then the following turn killing him with a mace and Helm Splitter. Though the chapter's not quite over, as the new boss appears, his monster form. Early on, when constructing solo runs, I found that this chapter used to be very tedious, as when it came to killing the enemies in a time-efficient manner, I found that in most cases, characters weren't doing enough damage in the amount of time with spaces for healing. Character could complete the chapter in 100 turns. But with the added skills that Ferdinand's using, as well as the stat boosters that he's acquired throughout the run, as well as just better knowledge of how the enemy works, the monsters become more trivial. Those with a keen eye would notice that the monster just sits in the corner and never moves. So, with good positioning and a good use of the Archer class, we can just snipe him from a few tiles away and slowly chip at him until we can get the final blow. You could also, if you wanted to, break all his armor points so you could get some rare monster materials. Didn't elect to do that in this run, although we did have the ability to do so. And with the final blow now landed, that concludes Chapter 5. Including Chapter 5, we can see that Ferdinand's growths are slowly getting worse, particularly in speed. It's a bit of a bummer, as he was quite the god at speed during most of this playthrough, but it seems that as long as you have quite a higher level cap than normal, you tend to beat the stat race, even when at a lower average than usual. For reference, at level 17 with all the classes he's been in, he should be at 19 speed. However, he's at 17. Can make a difference on faster type enemies. Everywhere else is decaying even more, notably Charisma. While Ferdinand might have had a break during this chapter, following chapter, Chapter 6, that might be a bit more difficult for Ferdinand. Stay tuned for the next episode as we explore Chapter 6 and the chapter preparation before it.